Hey there, happy Dr. Martin Luther King Day. I have some thoughts below, which are the 10 action points from Dr. King's Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. I paired these with some concrete, real-world examples of the Black community in the United States that's already doing the work. These are not perfect models, but they are living laboratories of community over chaos. And the initial point that I want to make here is that there are people who are living the dream and turning community or chaos into community. The first directive that Dr. King gives us is number 1, move from protest to reconstruction. One example of that is a community in Georgia called the New Community Incorporation. I've got some pictures here. And they're founded by black farmers, and they were founded by black farmers in the 1960s as a direct response to the civil rights era displacement. They were one of the first modern land trusts in these United States, focused on land by blacks. They focused on land retention, food sovereignty or independence, and cooperative ownership. There are some people who have turned chaos into community. The second thing that Dr. King wanted us to address was to commit to economic justice as central. Treat poverty as structural and not moral failure. Poor people are not bad people. Poor people are more times than not poor because of the structural system. One example of this, committing economic justice as a central part of their existence, is the Industrial Areas Foundation. It is a black church coalition between Chicago, Baltimore, and Texas. Black congregations have secured living wage ordinances, workforce pipelines, and public investment in underserved neighborhoods. I've got some pictures of them too. The third action point from Where Do We Go From Here was to support a guaranteed income. A guaranteed income. Provide unconditional economic dignity. When we give out food first and second Fridays and every Sunday morning, we're passing out more than just food. We're passing out dignity. We're offering people an opportunity to retain their dignity while feeding themselves and their families and using our program to stretch their dollars. That's allowing for them to live in dignity. The mayors for guaranteed income in Jacksonville or Jackson, Mississippi is an example of giving black families direct monthly cash payments, and the outcomes reduce stress, improve food security, and increase job stability. I've got pictures of that too. And here's the picture that's the winner. Bingo. Bingo. The fourth action point that Dr. King lifts up in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, is to build multiracial coalitions of the poor, unite around shared economic oppression. Example of that was Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign, which took root in North Carolina and Kentucky, black-led but multiracial. Organizes the health care, wages, houses, and voting rights explicitly following King's final vision. If you are a historian, you would know that when Dr. King went to Memphis to march with the garbage workers, Dr. King told the white folk, he said, look, you all might as well join us. You're as poor as we are. And can you imagine if poor people across racial lines would band together and put aside our differences, which are minimal, and address the issues of housing, healthcare, wages, and voting rights? Do you know that our country and its system of capitalism and division of labor is not equipped to handle a coalition between poor whites and poor blacks? What a wonderful thing that would be. The fifth thing that Dr. King asked for us to do is to practice nonviolence as a way of life. If you take a scan through social media right now, you're going to see a lot of people fighting, a lot of people boxing out in the streets and wrestling, and a lot of anger in the streets right now with ICE, and there's just a lot of division and ill feelings. It's almost as if people have short fuses. King says, no matter what those devils do, no matter what those devils do, practice nonviolence as a way of life. In the long run, it's a much better life. I've never seen anyone win a fight. Not even once. I've never seen anyone win a fight. Now, you can declare a winner if you want to, but if you're in a real fight, both parties go home wounded, and they never forget. And one may be declared a winner for the moment. I've never seen a family fight and a winner was declared. I've never seen a husband and wife fight and a winner was truly declared. No one wins a fight, especially when violence is involved. Replace punishment, which apparently is the motivation for violence, with a spirit or a sense of restoration. Restoration, a sense of building. When you're building, you realize that violence is destructive. When you're building a family, building a business, building a church, when you're building a snowman, violence is destructive. One example of that is the Community Justice Action Fund of Oakland, California, black-led restorative justice circles. They reduce incarceration by resolving conflict without police or courts. Now, I must give kudos to our mayor here in Cleveland, who has significantly reduced violent crime in Cleveland in his term. Let's talk about it instead of fighting about it. The sixth objective that Dr. King laid out in his book was to reject militarism and redirect the resources from militarism. We spend billions of dollars on the military, and yet we have a homeless problem throughout this nation. We spend billions on the military, and yet we have people that are unemployed here in America. We spend billions on defense, and we have mediocre, substandard public school systems. What are we protecting? Fund life, not surveillance. Fund the life of Americans as opposed to funding police to police them or armies to police them. One example of that is the violence interrupters in Chicago and Baltimore, where formerly incarcerated black men prevent violence through community mediation, funded instead of police expansion. That's good stuff. Number 7, develop political power beyond voting. It amazes me that there are still people out here professing that voting doesn't matter. That amazes me. That means you have never read history. That means that you are woefully uneducated. That means that you don't keep up with current events. You're not politically active. But you have the nerve to open your mouth and say, voting doesn't matter. Voting matters more than life in this country. If you don't vote, you don't exist. But there are people whose mind has betrayed them and allows for their mouth to spout ignorance, which makes them look foolish. It wastes your time, and it moves me to want to just pray for them because I feel sorry for them. When you develop political power beyond voting, you organize year-round civic power, year-round, not just on election day, but year-round. You're flexing your political mind and your muscle. One example of this is Black Votes Matter in Georgia and Alabama. They build local infrastructure, not just turnout. Funds Black-led grassroots groups that pressure officials after the elections, in between elections. Check that out. Number 8, center the poor in leadership. Those closest to the pain lead the solutions. Folk who are suffering have something to offer to the solution. In fact, I think most folks who are poor know great solutions regarding how to eliminate poverty. If only we would listen to them and allow them leadership. One example of that is Moms for Housing in Oakland, California. Homeless black mothers occupied vacant homes, forcing policy change, resulting in permanent housing and public accountability. That's good stuff. The 9th issue that Dr. King puts forth is to confront Northern structural racism. Where you live, if you live in low to moderate income housing, is not an indictment on your ability. It is the system. Where you go to school and what you learn and what you don't learn, which is very important. It is not because you are inferior. It is a result of the system. The zoning that occurs as it relates to school systems, housing, and even what banks designate as bank desert areas. That's not you. It's not you. That is the system. If we address housing, schools, and zoning, we can remove homes from speculative markets. We can keep housing affordable for black residents in gentrifying neighborhoods. One example of a group that's doing that is the Detroit Community Land Trust Coalition. And then finally, the 10th point that Dr. King puts forth in his Where Do We Go From Here? Community to Chaos is that we should choose community over chaos every time. The beloved community. That has to be a conscious thought, that I'm going to choose community, harmony, unity over division, chaos, and confrontation. Be intentional about choosing community over chaos. If you want to live in a good neighborhood, keep it a good neighborhood. Don't allow for your chaos to make it just like any other neighborhood. Build holistic ecosystems of care. Create situations where workers, co-ops, urban farming, housing, tech, and political education can happen. Explicitly be grounded in King's beloved community framework. One example of this is the Cooperation Jackson in Jackson, Mississippi. And here's one of their logos. All right. One closing insight from those 10 action points from Dr. King's Where Do We Go From Here? Community or Chaos is that King did not ask whether black communities could do this. He assumed that they would if they were given the chance, the space, the resources, and moral clarity. He assumed that if no one was standing in our way, we would do those 10 things. What the examples that I gave you prove is that chaos is not inevitable. Community is already being built right now. There are people doing great things right now. And if you're not one of them, now is the time for you to be great. I want to move then into our keynote lecture. And it's really good. That's why I'm taking time to do it in this fashion tonight, because it's really good. And I can see how this is going to impact my ministry. And I can see how this is going to just be amazingly powerful for me in the next year and beyond. I wanted to identify the real battlefields for black folks. The real battlefields for, what do you want to call us? Black, colored, niggas, Negroes, coloreds in America, African American, what do you want to call us? Mulatto, octoroon, whatever term that you feel comfortable with nowadays. All people are from Africa. All of them, the black and the white. Newsflash, everyone has melanin in their skin. Newsflash, there's a thing called Pan-Africanism, and there is an African diaspora, and all people, black, Indian, Spanish, Asian, are just stops along the way. And it all started in Mother Africa. You can go to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., and it'll show you a map of how all life originated in Africa. And based on geography and relation to the equator and relation to the sun, the levels of melanin in our skin adjusted. I just need you to be clear that there is only one race. And the division that skin color and mean-spiritedness and historical systematic oppression has caused, I'm sure, makes God very sad. I was raised in a house where you gave everybody a chance. You respected and loved everybody. And skin color was a non-issue. I come from a theological background where I understand that it is not the color of your skin, but I like to say it is the color of your soul that makes a difference. Now you chew on that. So for those who identify with humanity in America, there are 1, 2, 3 battlefields that I want to identify from Dr. King's Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. The first battle room is the classroom. We are losing in the classroom. The second battlefield is the voting booth. We are losing in the voting booth. The third category is the banking system. We are losing in the banking system. Classroom, voting booth, banking system. We're losing. It is a battle. It is a war. And we are losing the war of the mind in the classroom. TikTok, the news, conversation around the cooler, that is not an education. Sorry. Television, the latest movie, that's not an education. It is a form of training, but it is not critical thinking. It is not problem solving. It is not data analysis. It is not connecting the dots. We're losing in the classroom, at the voting booth, and in the banking system. I'm going to give you my own Dr. King rooted analysis of Black power, Black progress, and misplaced focus. Let's reframe the battlefield. I don't know where you think it is. I'm not even sure if we know who the enemy is. I know who the enemy is, but I'm not sure as I look around and I see people who are their own worst enemy. I am not sure that we know who the enemy is, and unfortunately, we find ourselves fighting against ourselves. We made a mistake. We thought the battlefield was the football field. If I can excel on the football field, if I can make some money, if I can become a coach, then I've won on the battlefield. No one really cares if you ran the football 1,000 yards, if you won several championships. No one really cares. It is a gentleman's, and I use that term loosely, opportunity to spend their money on the horses or the chickens or the dogs. It is just entertainment. It is entertainment for those who have money. So no one really cares how many points you scored. No one really cares. Those things do not matter. I am of the mind that Jim Thorpe was the greatest athlete ever. And I'm sure that there are people who saw Jim Thorpe and said, my God, we'll never see another athlete like that again. He's doing amazing things. Most of the people listening here today have no idea who Jim Thorpe is or was. I'm of the mind that Will Chamberlain was one of the most complete human specimens of athletic ability that God ever made. People don't know that he played lacrosse, he threw the javelin, he played tennis. He didn't just play basketball. He was my favorite word, amazing. But now he's dead and gone. And no one really cares about how many records he broke or how many women he slept with. Because in the long run, it does not matter. We thought the battlefield was the basketball court. We think that arguing between who's the greatest, Jordan or LeBron, makes a difference. We really think that makes a difference. That is a distraction. It is entertainment. It is an opportunity to distract your true mind talents to nothingness. Nothingness. Right now there's a game on, a national college football game is coming on soon. I'm an Ohio State fan. You know I could care less. But there are people that are involved mentally and spiritually and psychologically, and there's nothing wrong with that. But don't be fooled. Don't think that this game matters. In 10 or 20 years, no one will remember this game. Lord have mercy. We have mistaken and thought the battlefield was the recording studio where we can make some money and make some fame and shake our behinds and live the life. Michael Jackson is gone. He's dead. He's gone. Whitney is gone. Marvin Gaye is gone. I mean, we can go on and on and on. That lifestyle is temporary. It's fleeting. I'm sure it's enjoyable. But in the long run, it really doesn't matter. No one will ever hear Whitney sing another note. And that is a shame because she was a gift from God. But she's gone. No one knows her political views. No one really understands her religious views. No one is really clear about what her legacy is. And wow. We thought we were fighting for something. We made a mistake. I'm making this video tonight because I want you to know where the real battlefields are. And you need to adjust your life to fighting where it matters. The real battlefields have always been, number one, the classroom. Number two, the voting booth. And number three, the bank. The bank. And the black church has always stood at the center of all three. I need to talk about the classroom. Whoever controls the knowledge is the victor. Whoever controls what books you buy, what books you read, how the books are written, what's taught in the books, who teaches the books, where they teach what's in the books, even why they teach what's in the books. Whoever controls the knowledge is the victor. I made a comparison between what's happening for black people in the classroom on November 3rd, 1966, which is my birthday, and what is happening for black folks right now. Huh? Huh? Black Americans earn less than 2% of PhDs on my birthday in 1966. Fewer than 1,000 black PhDs occurred every year. Their concentration at the time was in education, theology, and sociology. They were almost exclusively excluded from economics, finance, engineering, and policy sciences. Education was permitted, but power disciplines were restricted. Today, 2025, black Americans earn 7 to 9% of the PhDs, thousands per year, still dramatically underrepresented in these areas: AI, economics, banking, leadership, capital markets, and policy design. That's why we run around saying you don't need to vote, because we don't have any education in policy design. Don't you know people go to school for policy design so that they can manipulate the voting system? My vote, it don't matter because it don't matter. It's all fixed. It's all rigged. No, you are a part of the system, and you are losing, especially in the classroom. We have increased access since Dr. King passed, but we have not strategically, or we have, but we have increased access, but we have not increased strategic placement. We have not benefited from a plan of strategic overcoming. I need to talk about the voting booth. He who controls the rules, the policy, is the victor. Policies are generated every day at every level of government that affects your life. There are House bills that are voted on every single day that not only the Congress in Washington is in session, but the Congress in your state every day. People are making policies that change your life, and they vote on them every day. That is why I have no patience with people who have decided that they not only do they not want to vote, but they tell other people not to vote. That is asking people to lose. How can you win the game if you never even put on your uniform? In 1966, there was overt suppression of the voting rights. They gave literacy tests, poll taxes, physical intimidation, job loss, threats, violence. Let me put this in plainer terms. A literacy test means that you go to the poll and they say if you can't read a certain part of the Constitution, then you can't vote. The ridiculous thing about it is that in many cases, the persons at the poll who were administering the test couldn't read themselves. So it had nothing to do with whether or not they could read, and all to do with the color of their skin. Poll tax means that when you get to the poll, we say, hey, you got to pay $150 to vote here. If you don't have that money, you don't have that tax, you can't vote. That's unconstitutional. Who needs the Constitution? That sounds like Trump, doesn't it? Physical intimidation. You come to vote and there are people standing there with guns waiting on you. There's people waiting on the pathway to, or the street to the voting pool, waiting to run you off the road, waiting to lynch you, waiting to shoot you, waiting to molest you, waiting to do all the things that our light-skinned brothers love to do in the name of love of America and love of Jesus Christ. You work at the factory, job loss threats. Boss man finds out you're going to vote. Boss man says if you go vote, you won't have a job in the morning. What a terrible thing for a father to be in a position where he wants to exercise his right to vote and his freedom as a man, only to be told by his boss that if he goes to exercise your right as a man and as a citizen of the United States, you will not have a job in the morning. Therefore, a man has to choose between feeding his family and being a man. You say, well, that's not no big deal. You've never been there. You're spoiled, and you're entitled, and you're unread, and you're ignorant, and you're wasting my time. Churches function as voter schools. Churches function as registration centers. Churches function as protection networks. Today, we have the same thing, more voter suppression, only it's bureaucratic. It's more sophisticated. They have voter ID laws now. Polling sites are closed without announcement. Names are removed from voting rolls. Anyone who has a felony except the President of the United States is not allowed to vote. You didn't see him vote. Early voting has been restricted. And now if you give somebody in line to vote on a hot day a sandwich or some water, it is a crime. And you tell me that voting is not important. What an idiot you are. Then in 1966, it was the same goal. Today, it is still the same goal, just different language. Then you are unfit to vote. Now you fail to meet the requirements. Same goal, different language. Same devil, different day. But the funny thing is that Black folks think that things have changed. And because things have changed, they have the freedom to do nothing. Let me tell you something that the devil taught me in this life. Never do nothing. Ha! Who, Jesus? I need to say a word about banks. Whoever controls the capital is the victor. Do you control the capital? Are you at least even trying? In 1966, there were 50 to 60 black-owned banks, born from churches, mutual aid societies, and civil rights networks. They wouldn't let us bank in their bank, so we created our own. Our banks gave home loans. Our banks gave capital for businesses. Our banks gave for community reinvestment. We would circulate the dollars in our own community. Today, we've gone in 1966 from 50 to 60 black-owned banks to less than 20. Now, this comes in the face of, despite the fact we're more educated now, we've got more or higher incomes now, we've got more black professionals now, but we have less banks. Even when we make the money, we don't do anything with the money to improve our overall communities. We have chosen chaos rather than community. And if we were to ask the question, where do we go from here? The picture is not very bright. The most dangerous regression that we have seen is that we've gained degrees, but we've lost deposits. We've gained celebrities, but we have lost credit control. Wow. I move to my close. We have committed a great error in my estimation. We have exchanged visibility for power. Just because we see you doesn't mean that you have any power. Sports create income, but sports do not create an infrastructure. Having income without an infrastructure is like having water with no bucket. Entertainment creates fame, not policy. That means that you can be very, very, very well known, but not necessarily known among the people who have voting power. You may be famous among those that don't vote, but being famous among those that do vote and do affect policy is what makes a difference. Celebrities create followers. Oh, we love followers. But they don't create institutions. You can have all the followers you want to. Where's your foundation? Where's your school? Where's your church? Where's your bank? Where is your institution? Lord have mercy. Power does not live on the stage. Power lives in the system. I need to tell you why the church still matters. The black church was and is the first black-owned institution. It gave us our first black schools, many of our colleges. The black church gave us our first banks. The black church was our first political headquarters. And that is why the large majority of our so-called leaders come from and emerge from the church. Dr. King was a product of the church. He was raised at Ebenezer Baptist Church, pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. For King, the church was a moral training ground. It was a political classroom. For Dr. King, it was a leadership incubator. Where do we receive moral training today? Where do we receive our political savvy today? Where do we train leaders today? Wow. The church, according to Dr. King, must be the thermostat and not the thermometer. What that means is that the church ought not be checking the temperature all the time and talking about the problem all the time, but the church ought to be setting the temperature. It ought to be effecting the temperature. It ought to not just talk about the problem, but solve the problems. Help me, Holy Ghost. As I move to my close, let me say this. As we take note of what the church has done and what the church will do, I need to say to you tonight that it is past time for us to begin to see our purpose. If we are not effecting purpose in the classroom, we've lost. If we're not doing homework with our babies, we've lost. No group of people sends their children to another race of people and expects for those people to train them to succeed. That's our job. That's mother's job. That's father's job, grandfather's job, grandmother's job, brother's and sister's job, cousin's job. That's a family job. Education is a family affair. We must vote when the opportunity comes to vote, even if we don't feel like it. Did you know the average voter in America is a white male in his 70s? They don't miss a vote. Oh no. If there is an election for the dog catcher, they're going to cast their vote. And they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that you don't vote. And the most successful thing that they have done so far is to get into your mind, to convince you that you don't have to vote. You don't need to vote. Whatever they need to do to convince you to come to the conclusion that you don't go to that voting pool is a victory. Because low voter turnout means that the Republican Party wins. High voter turnout means that the Democrats win. You can argue Democrat, Republican all you want to. Joe Biden did more for this country than any other president in the history of these United States. All you have to do is check the record. He eliminated COVID. Do you even remember COVID? He did such a good job with COVID that we elected the idiot that was the president during COVID. Wow. That's how good Joe Biden was. Do you remember we wore masks? Do you remember driving through our streets and they were abandoned like ghost towns? Do you remember they were stacking bodies in the streets in the cemeteries in Florida? Do you remember when they had refrigerators that were housing bodies in New York? Do you remember planes were empty? You could walk, drive right up in the airport, get a parking spot right in the front, go through the airport. You wouldn't see anyone until you got to your gate. And you get on the plane. I get on the plane with 2 or 3 people. Do you remember that? We were like that for 2 whole years. Biden came and fixed that whole thing. Wiped it out of our minds. Opened up the stores. Circulated money into the community. Got some medical treatment for some people who needed it desperately. All of a sudden, COVID wasn't a big deal. And the whole time you've got these idiots with full mouths and full pockets talking about how terrible the economy is. We need to elect this idiot who has now proposed to charge the Department of Justice $230 million for finding him guilty 34 times of 34 felonies. Help me, Holy Ghost. We've got to do better. We've got to go to the voting box. And if your friend doesn't want to go, to hell with your friend. Your friend is an idiot and they are ignorant. You can't waste time arguing with ignorant people. They will beat you down with experience. Lord have mercy. Finally, friends, we've got to go to the bank. And I don't mean go to the bank and be a customer or a consumer. I'm saying you need to go to the bank and be a bank owner. We need bank owners. We need people who understand economics. We don't need any more hairdressers, no more cosmetics people. We don't need any more postal workers. We don't need any more football players, no more basketball players. We don't need any more dancers, no more singers. We don't need any of those. We don't need another one. We need a J.P. Morgan. We need a John D. Rockefeller. We need an Andrew Carnegie. That's what we need. We need some bankers. Oh, Lord have mercy. I have completed my lecture, and all I can say and all I'm reminded of is I think about free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. I've got one even better. Before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Happy Dr. Martin Luther King's Day. Get in that classroom. Get in that ballot booth and get in that banking business. We need you. God bless you.